Hello and welcome to this webinar, and thank you for joining me to talk about dyslexia assessments. My name is Sarah Louise and I run Dyslexia Support Consultancy. I'm a fully qualified dyslexia assessor holding an APC, the Assessing Practicing Certificate. I'm also a qualified school teacher and an ex-special educational needs coordinator. I offer dyslexia assessments to children and adults, both online and face-to-face. So the aims of this webinar, I'm going to describe the assessment process and what the stages are of an assessment and what you can expect to happen and why it happens in this way. I'm also going to explain key features and terminology in the reports. And once you've had your report and you know the outcomes, I will explore some of the avenues that you might want to consider. So who can assess for dyslexia? There are two types of professionals that hold the qualifications allowed to assess for dyslexia. These are either educational psychologists, also known as an EP, or a dyslexia specialist assessor holding a level 7 qualification in assessing for dyslexia. That person will be a member of a professional body such as the BDA, the British Dyslexia Association, PATOS, or the Dyslexia Guild. They must also hold an Assessing Practicing Certificate, the APC, as this enables us to make sure that we're providing a good service and is recognition of a professional competence. Every 3 years, we have to have the assessment reviewed and renewed. So it helps to monitor our practice and helps us to know that we're adhering to modern guidelines, which is especially important in an ever-changing field. If you're planning on using the report to apply for Disability Students Allowance, DSA, then it is important to use an assessor with an APC. I know that a lot of parents often ask whether a dyslexia assessment is offered on the NHS. Sadly, it is not, as it is seen as educational and not a medical need. I'm also asked whether schools are in the position and should be funding the dyslexia assessment. Unfortunately, most schools don't have the budget to fund either an educational psychologist or a specialist dyslexia assessor to come into school. And it is very unusual for a school to have an in-house assessor. So what can a dyslexia assessment offer? I understand that going through an assessment can be a daunting experience, and I try to put you or your child at ease. It is a way to ascertain the individual's profile by celebrating their strengths and looking at the challenges they may experience, and look at how these may be impacting on education, work, or in day-to-day life. It can give formal recognition of dyslexia, which is then documented in a report, and this report provides an in-depth evaluation of their strengths and challenges and ways to help overcome certain obstacles that they may be experiencing in their study, employment, or daily life. They will also come away with good strategies and ideas for ways of moving forwards, and the report can be shared with other individuals such as teachers, family members, tutors, and line managers at work, and they can help provide the individual with the appropriate support. You can also use the report to apply for access to work funding or for a Disability Students Allowance DSA if you go to university. The reports are very much targeted and tailored towards your individual needs, and it can also help the person to know what exam access arrangements they may be entitled to at school, university, and for professional exams. Once a person has been formally identified as dyslexic, then they are considered to have a recognised disability covered by the Equality Act. So does your child need an assessment? So there's some things that either you or the teacher may have noted during the early years. For example, they may have difficulty learning nursery rhymes, paying attention, sitting still, listening to stories. They might like listening to stories, but show no interest in letters or words. They may have difficulty learning to sing or recite the alphabet. They may have a history of slow speech development. They may muddle words up, cucumber and flutterby, instead of cucumber and butterfly. They may have a difficulty keeping a simple rhythm. They may find it hard to carry out two or more instructions at the same time. For example, put away your toys and then put the books on the shelf, or go and clean your teeth, get your school bag, and put your shoes on. They may forget names of friends, teachers, colours. They may ask you to pass the doofus instead of the remote control. They may have poor auditory discrimination. They may confuse directional words, for example, up and down. There may be a family history of dyslexia or reading difficulties. They may have difficulty with sequencing, for example, coloured beads, and classroom routines. They may substitute words, lampshade for lamppost. They may appear not to listen or not pay attention and have good and bad days at school for no apparent reason. It may also help to ask your child how they feel about reading and writing. They may say that they hate it, that it is hard, that their friend helps them. They tell them how to spell words, or they read a word for them, or remind them what they've been asked to do by the teacher. They may also say that their friends and everybody else is better than them. There are checklists on my website which may help you decide whether an assessment is suitable. Screeners. These are often used in school as there is rarely a person who is suitably qualified to conduct the tests required for a full diagnostic dyslexia assessment. Screeners are not a form of diagnosis, and they cannot form part of the evidence for a dyslexia diagnosis. There are a few screeners which schools subscribe to and use, and they're usually completed in school, and the individuals are tested using a computer-based program to complete the subtest. However, the screeners do not always consider observations of behaviours during the test or note strategies used to complete them. A diagnosis from a qualified assessor is not concluded solely by scores. The test does not always include phonological awareness, phonological memory, and speed of processing analysis. And it may or may not include verbal and visual assessment of underlying skills in the screeners. The screeners will often test reading, although not as thoroughly as in a full diagnostic assessment. Screeners also don't take into account the individual's history, and any familial links are not included. It is important that all aspects are tested and information collated to form a true overall picture, which is what we do within the full diagnostic assessment. During a computer-based screener, it does not ascertain the nuances of the individual's response or establish if they're just clicking randomly on answers. It also doesn't consider if the person being tested can use the equipment, and this might affect the screener's results. The scoring won't be able to be considered and compared, and it also won't take into account any strategies employed to complete each subtest. Overall, the screener may provide negative findings which exclude a person from being considered for a full dyslexia assessment, or misdiagnose or not identify a different difficulty which requires onward referral. Sometimes schools will say that they will reassess in year 9. However, these tests are likely to be to see if the student qualifies for access arrangement, for example, extra time, and not to assess for dyslexia. So before the assessment, check the following. It's a very interactive process. You will be given a questionnaire, and then you will also have an in-person assessment as well. Other individuals may also be involved. So there is a school questionnaire that we ask that the school completes, or if you're an adult, there is a work questionnaire that we ask your line manager to complete. If you or your child have a tutor, then we may ask for them to fill in a questionnaire as well. We also ask for other copies of professional reports that have taken place for any other medical diagnosis. For example, autism, ADHD, hypermobility, etc. This is, of course, all done with your permission and can be a really valuable contribution to the assessment process, as it enables us to work in a holistic way and gain a better understanding of what is happening, the situation, and what factors might be at play. You or your child will need to have had a sight test within the last 2 years. And if it is a child coming for an assessment, it is important for them to know that it is someone who is interested in how people learn, and also to be able to help work out why some learning is difficult and what might help to make things easier. A child might want to bring along examples of schoolwork and reports with them to the assessment, or for an adult, they might want to bring work emails or other reports that they have produced. It is important that assessors have information about any previous assessments and or study support that has been given. This will help to avoid repetition of tests, which can make results invalid. So what happens on the day of the assessment? The assessment takes place either at the office of Dyslexia Support Consultancy or in one of the assessors' houses. It takes about 2 to 4 hours. So during an assessment, the assessor will carry out a series of tests to explore underlying ability, phonological awareness, speed of processing and memory, and also attainments of reading, writing, spelling. There is also normally an informal chat before the assessment, potentially to gather a little bit more background questionnaire. To formally diagnose dyslexia is one of the main aims, obviously, of the assessment process. And what happens after the assessment? After a diagnostic assessment, you will receive a written report. This normally takes between 2 to 3 weeks to complete. The report will provide evidence of the cognitive abilities. It may include signposting to other organisations or for further assessments for specific learning difficulties, if required. The report will include recommendations for how to support the person in the context of their study, the workplace, or their day-to-day life. Any recommendations of how an individual can be supported in the workplace as well. And the aim of the report is to have a document that the individual is happy to share with family, teachers, tutors, other professionals, and employees if they wish, as this will give them information on how they can help to provide support. So, what is in the final report? What does it look like? There is a cover page with your name, age, state of education, or your workplace. There is an overview, a summary of what's happened within the assessment and the diagnosis given. The background information includes things like pregnancy, any difficulties with birth, speech and language difficulties, whether there's a familial history of dyslexia, and any educational needs, test conditions, what happened on the day, the cognitive report, so for example, the underlying ability, phonological awareness, the processing speed, the working memory scores. Attainment is looking at reading, writing, spelling. Confirmation of diagnostic decision, if the person has dyslexia, what recommendations can be put into place, and also appendices. It is important to note that under GDPR, we cannot keep the report indefinitely, so please make sure that you keep your electronic copy safe alongside the password. What's next? So there might be recommendations in the report to help you. These could include onward referrals, maybe for ADHD or ASD, and that will depend what is in the background information and also what we see on the day. There may be recommendations for specialist computer software, for speech to text, so you can talk straight into your computer and it will type it for you, reading software or a reader pen. There may be other resources or apps or websites that may be helpful and beneficial for you. Any specialist teacher support or workplace support that would be suitable, and any exam access arrangements. There are many traits of dyslexia that cannot be captured through the tests administered, and some of these are compassion, hardworking, the self-esteem, the character of the person, their creativity, their reliability, their resilience, their honesty, their trustworthiness, their caring nature, how courageous they are, how loyal, how loving, their kindness, their patience, etc. And it is important to recognise that a dyslexic person may also have these traits. Thank you very much for listening. Just to let you know, I am dyslexic myself and I have the insight into the assessment process from both sides, as both an assessor and an assessee. I have been through the process and understand how life can affect you as a dyslexic. I also know how fulfilling it can be from both sides. I love that I am able to help people understand. Thank you very much for listening. I'm Sarah Louise from Dyslexia Support Consultancy. If I can help, please get in contact. I look forward to hearing from you.